You think being a kid is tough. Homework, waking up early, being told to eat your vegetables by the same person who ordered pizza last night, sitting in a classroom for 7 hours, doing things nobody asked you if you wanted to do. Yeah, terrible. Very difficult. 20,000 years ago, a child your age was already out there hunting. Not as a sport, not as a lesson, as breakfast. This is what childhood actually looked like back then. And it is going to make your school run feel like a spa day. Let's start from the very beginning, because the beginning was pretty brutal. Back then, roughly 4 to 5 out of every 10 children did not make it past age 5. We know this from the study of ancient bones and teeth found at sites all over the world. Scientists can read stress marks on teeth, tiny lines left behind when the body went through hunger or illness. The same way you read rings on a cut tree. Each hard year left a mark. No medicine, no hospitals, nothing. If you got sick, your body either fought it off or it didn't. If food ran low in the cold months, babies felt it first. If the mother couldn't produce milk and there was no other nursing woman nearby, the baby had a very serious problem. The fact that you exist right now means every single one of your ancestors beat those odds. Every last one of them, for 20,000 years, survived long enough to have children. You are the result of an unbroken chain of people who simply refuse to die. That is not nothing. That is actually incredible. You're welcome. If you made it past birth, here is what your early life looked like. You were carried everywhere. Not because it was trendy, because putting a baby down and walking away was not safe. The group was always moving, following animals, finding food, staying ahead of whatever was trying to eat them. A baby left on the ground was a problem, so someone held you. All the time. You were also breastfed for a very long time. Scientists can measure this by looking at nitrogen levels preserved in ancient teeth. The numbers from this period show that most children were still nursing between ages 2 and 4. Some even longer. Why? Because there was no baby food, no formula, no soft cereal in a little jar. Breast milk was the backup plan for everything. A 4-year-old nursing was not unusual at all. And yeah, you also slept in a group. The whole band, usually 20 to 50 people, slept close together for warmth. There were no separate rooms, no bedtime routines, no one sneaking downstairs for a midnight snack. Everyone was already downstairs. There was only downstairs. It was a cave. By ages 3 to 5, children were not sitting around doing nothing. Play existed. We know this because the evidence is still there. At a site called Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic, researchers found small clay animal figures that children clearly made and handled. In caves across Europe, including Rouffignac Cave in France, tiny handprints and small footprints are pressed into the rock right alongside adult cave art made tens of thousands of years ago. So yes, children played. But every game was also training. Throwing a stone, hunting practice, braiding plant fibers, rope making practice, helping to sort food, survival practice. There was no split between playing and learning because life didn't have that split yet. Everything you did as a child was preparation for the thing that kept everyone alive. Children learned by watching adults. Not from a screen, not from a book, but right there, in person, constantly. There were no other rooms to go to. If the adults were skinning an animal, the children were watching. If the adults were making tools, the children were watching. Knowledge passed directly from one set of hands to the next, face to face, every single day. By around age 5 or 6, children were already helping to find food. Berries, insects, small roots near camp, small contributions, but real ones. By age 7 or 8, things got serious. Scientists can tell what kind of work a child did by looking at their bones. Repetitive, heavy tasks leave marks on the skeleton. Changes in muscle attachment points, patterns of wear, that researchers can still read today. The bones of children from this period show that they were doing physically. Demanding work, scraping animal hides, processing plants, carrying loads, helping to build shelters. They were not helpers standing on the side. They were part of the operation. Their teeth also tell a story. Wear patterns show that children, just like adults, used their teeth as tools, gripping materials while their hands worked. But here's the fun part. Tooth decay was almost non-existent. The food back then had almost no sugar in it. No sweets, no juice, no bread, no anything refined. Their teeth wore down from heavy use, but they didn't rot from sugar. The Ice Age was somehow better for your teeth than a bag of sweets. Make of that what you will. Here is where the modern idea of being a teenager completely falls apart. There was no teenage phase, no in-between years of finding yourself while someone else bought your food and paid your rent. By the early teens, young people were doing adult work. Skeletal evidence from sites across Europe confirms that teenage boys were going on hunts. Teenage girls were processing large amounts of food and materials, work that took years to learn and serious physical strength to do. There was no ceremony marking the shift from child to adult that we can point to in the record. What the evidence shows instead is a slow, continuous handover of responsibility that started almost at birth and just kept going. One day you were learning, the next you were leading. Nobody sat you down and said you were ready. The world just needed you to be ready, and so you were. Relationships, what we'd call partnerships, also started earlier than we would consider normal today. Burial evidence suggests that people paired off in their mid-teens, not because it was ideal. Because life was short, babies were hard to keep alive, and the group needed to keep growing. Evidence from burial practices also shows that these bonds were emotional, not just practical. People were buried with care, sometimes with gifts, sometimes with their partners nearby. They loved each other. It just happened faster because time was not something they had in abundance. Here is the part most people don't stop to think about. By the time a child raised in this world reached adulthood, they were remarkable, not in a vague motivational poster way, in a real, practical, terrifying way. They could read animal tracks and tell you how old they were, which direction the animal was heading, and whether it was worth following. They knew hundreds of plants by sight, smell, and touch, which ones were food, which ones were medicine, which ones would kill you before sundown. They could build a shelter from scratch, start a fire without matches, navigate in the dark using stars, process a whole animal carcass and waste almost none of it. A modern adult plopped into that world would be dead in days. Genuinely, you would not know where to find water. You could not identify half the plants around you. You would not be strong enough or skilled enough to get food. You would stand in a landscape absolutely full of things to eat and slowly starve while looking at all of it. But bring one of those children into your kitchen and they would think they had walked into a place beyond imagination. Cold water from a tap, bread someone else baked, fruit from a place they'd never heard of, food with no danger attached to it. They would not understand a single thing they were looking at, and they would eat everything. 20,000 years ago, childhood was not a protected time. It was not a phase where you got to figure things out slowly while the adults handled the hard stuff. It was training, constant, non-stop, start from birth training in how to stay alive. Children carried real weight almost as soon as they could walk. They learned by doing, helped by necessity, and became adults not when anyone decided they were ready, but when the world needed them to be. And through all of it, the hunger, the cold, the weight of it, they still pressed their small hands against cave walls in firelight, left their marks, said, in the oldest way possible, I was here. You are descended from those children, every single one of you. Try to act like it.